Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to this segment of Coach Gurbani's a-sabad-a-day. Our recitation today is the second Ashtapadi in Sri Rag and goes as follows. Mahalla Pehla. Sabhe Kant Mahelian, Sagliyan Kareh Vitsigar, Ganat Ganavan Aiyan, Suha Ves Vikar, Pakhand Prem Na Paiya, Khota Paj Khuar, Har Jio, ਏਉ ਪਿਰ ਰਾਵੈ ਨਾਰ ਤੁਧ ਪਾਵਨ ਸੁਹਾਗਣੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਕਿਰਪਾ ਲਹੈ ਸਵਾਰ ਰਹਾਉ ਗੁਰ ਸਬਦੀ ਸਿਗਾਰਿਆ ਤਨ ਮਨ ਪਿਰ ਕੈ ਪਾਸ ਦੋਇ ਕਰ ਜੋਰ ਖੜੀ ਤੱਕੈ ਸੱਚ ਕਹੈ ਅਰਦਾਸ ਲਾਲ ਰੱਤੀ ਸੱਚ ਭੈ ਵਸੀ ਪਾਏ ਰੱਤੀ ਰੰਗ ਰਾਸ ਪ੍ਰੈ ਕੀ ਚੇਰੀ ਕਾਂਡੀਐ ਲਾਲੀ ਮਾਨੇ ਨਾਉ ਸਾਚੀ ਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਨ ਟੁੱਟਈ ਸਾਚੇ ਮੇਲ ਮਿਲਾਓ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਰਤੀ ਮਨ ਵੇਦਿਆ ਹਾਉ ਸਦ ਬਲਿਹਾਰੇ ਜਾਉ ਸਾਧਨ ਰੰਡ ਨ ਪੈਸਈ ਜੇ ਸਤਿਗੁਰ ਮਾਹੇ ਸਮਾਏ ਪਿਰ ਰਸਾਲੂ ਨੌਤਨੋ ਸਾਚੋ ਮਰੇ ਨ ਜਾਏ ਨਿਤ ਰਵੇ ਸੁਹਾਗਣੀ ਸਾਚੀ ਨਦਰ ਰਜਾਏ ਸਾਚ ਤੜੀ ਤਨ ਮਾਂਡੀਐ ਕਾਪੜ ਪ੍ਰੇਮ ਸਿਗਾਰ ਚੰਦਨ ਚੀਤ ਵਸਾਇਆ ਮੰਦਰ ਦਸਵਾਂ ਦੁਆਰ ਦੀਪਕ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਵਿਗਾਸਿਆ ਰਾਮ ਨਾਮ ਉਰਹਾਰ ਨਾਰੀ ਅੰਦਰ ਸੋਹਣੀ ਮਸਤਕ ਮਣੀ ਪਿਆਰ ਸੋਭਾ ਸੁਰਤ ਸੁਹਾਵਣੀ ਸਾਚੇ ਪ੍ਰੇਮ ਅਪਾਰ ਬਿਨ ਪਿਰ ਪੁਰਖ ਨ ਜਾਣੀ ਸਾਚੇ ਗੁਰ ਕੈ ਹੇਤ ਪਿਆਰ ਨਿਸ ਅੰਧਿਆਰੀ ਸੁੱਤੀਐ ਕਿਉ ਪਿਰ ਬਿਨ ਰਹਿਣ ਵਿਹਾਏ ਅੰਕ ਜਲੋਂ ਧਨ ਜਾਲਿਓ ਮਨ ਧਨ ਜਲ ਬਲ ਜਾਏ ਜਾਂ ਧਨ ਕੰਤ ਨ ਰਾਵਿਆ ਤਾਂ ਬਿਰਥਾ ਜੋ ਬਨ ਜਾਏ ਸਹਿਜੇ ਕੰਤ ਮਹੇਲੜੀ ਬੁੱਝ ਨ ਪਾਏ ਸਹਿਜੇ ਕੰਤ ਮਹੇਲੜੀ ਸੂਤੀ ਬੂਝ ਨ ਪਾਏ ਹਾਂ ਸੁੱਤੀ ਪਿਰ ਜਾਗਣਾ ਕਿਸ ਕੋ ਪੁੱਛੋ ਜਾਏ ਸਤਿਗੁਰ ਮੇਲੀ ਭੈ ਵਸੀ ਨਾਨਕ ਪ੍ਰੇਮ ਸਿਖਾਏ. Now we notice that this passage, like a lot of Gurbani, is rich in metaphor and symbolism. And here the allegory of a bride seeking union with the divine groom is being used, as it has been in other passages. And this really signifies the transformation of the individual psyche to a state called Suhagan, a bride that is in bliss, that comes about from a union with the spouse. And here the spouse is referring to the creator spouse, the self within us. And the bride, of course, is the bride of divine knowledge. Again, a metaphor for an enlightened consciousness. And in this passage, Guru Nanak uses this feminine frame to represent the longing of the soul, the human psyche, if you will, the jeev, as we call it, for the divine. And in this frame, we are all women, Sabhe Kant Mahelian, looking for our spouse by trying to make ourselves attractive to the prospective bridegroom. Sagliyan kare sigar. But when the reckoning comes, it turns out that most of us are really not faithful. Ganat ganavana aya, suha ves vikar. So in the context of this passage, what it means is that we are really two-timing the spouse by being in love with the other suitor, namely Maya, love of the other. And Guruji calls out this hypocrisy in no uncertain terms when he says, Pakhand prem na paya, khota paj khuar. All that leads to is waywardness and being lost. Then he goes on to explain how a prospective bride is really to behave if it wishes consummation with the har. Harjyo io pirarave nar. And the short answer is, Tud pavan suhagni apni kirpa le swar. In the end, ultimately, it is the transformation that comes through grace, that comes to those filled with devotion. So the question might be, if it is all grace, is there anything we can do? Yes, indeed. Guruji expands further. There are things that we can do and should do. The first thing is to surrender oneself to the Shabad, or the word, the message of the Satgur, or the true enlightener. Gur sabdi sigarya tan man phir ke paas. So surrender, open yourself to the discourse of the Shabad, and the message, let it absorb, let it sink in. And then, with conviction, make a supplication. Doe kar jod, khari tak keh. Sach kahe ardas. Now, while this happens, there are qualities that have to be inculcated. Sach thari tan mediya, kappad prem sagar. So he is referring to the braids of a bride who is getting ready. So make truth the braid of your hair, the Guru advises us. Scent your clothes with the fragrance of remembrance. Chandan chitvase mandar daswaں dwar. Let a perfected awareness be the sandalwood altar of your consciousness. And this consciousness is at the threshold of the divine, with the knowledge that this Sabad gives you. Deepak Sabad Vigsya. Ram Naam Urhar. Let the light of self-knowledge shine like a necklace around your neck. This is a reference to the illumination of self-knowledge within the mind. These are the steps that the Guruji is showing us, essentially. Now, he's contrasting this with the unfaithful bride, which happens to be most of us. The unfaithful bride he likens to a woman who spends the night without consummation. Consummation doesn't occur. Union doesn't occur. Nis andhyari sutti kyo pir bin rain vihai. What would her state be like, he asks. How would she feel? And that is really a reflection on the anxieties and agitations of our mind. He says, Anka jalon, tan jalyo, man tan jal bal jaye. Translation, her limbs burn, meaning they are restless. Her body burns, that is to say, it is fidgety. And the wealth of her mind, the essence, self-knowledge, burns, which means, in real terms, for the mind, potential is wasted. Now the unfaithful wife is also caught in the love of the other, and in doing so doesn't really notice her spouse on the bed. Sabhe Kant Mahelian sutti bujh na paaye. So this essentially is the contrast that he draws between a faithful bride, which is what our mind should be, full of devotion, and an unfaithful bride, the one that is being driven by the ego into the rat race. And we need to move the polarized mind into a union with itself, so that this polarity that is pulling and tearing at the mind stops, and the mind can then actually tap into its own inner innate wisdom to see its path. With those thoughts, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.